All right, so today we're diving into something called the four states of consciousness.
Right.
Now, this isn't like a hard and fast scientific rule book or anything,
Yeah.
but more a framework to think about, levels of awareness,
Hmm.
the different ways that we experience the world and ourselves.
For sure.
I think it's going to be a good one for our listeners to get a handle on.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that we all experience, right?
Yeah.
Like these different states.
Right.
But we don't really often maybe step back and think about the framework or the bigger picture of it all.
Yeah.
So this will be a good exercise in that.
Yeah. So let's start with the most basic one, the one that we're in right now.
Okay.
Talking to you, listening, hopefully wide awake.
Right.
Waking consciousness.
Exactly. So waking consciousness is characterized by, being fully awake and aware of your surroundings,
Right.
able to think and reason and engage in all those complex behaviors that you do throughout your day.
Right. I mean, everything from, driving to work to reading a book to having this conversation.
Having a conversation, exactly.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
The next one, though, is a little bit more slippery.
Okay.
Altered states of consciousness.
Right. So altered states of consciousness are really any mental state that's significantly different from this normal waking consciousness.
Okay, so give me some examples. How does it actually manifest? Like what's going on in the brain and the mind and the body?
Yeah. So it can manifest in so many different ways, and that's what makes it so interesting. But some common characteristics include like changes in your perception.
Go.
So colors might seem brighter, sounds might seem more intense, or you might have like distortions in your perception of time.
And what can bring these on?
Oh, so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So things like meditation,
Okay.
hypnosis,
Mm-hmm.
certain drugs,
Right.
sensory deprivation.
Oh, wow.
All these things can kind of shift your brain chemistry and your neural activity
Mm-hmm.
in a way that induces these altered states.
Interesting. It's a pretty broad category then.
And it's a very broad category.
Yeah.
And within that, you have like the meditative states that
Yeah.
people experience. You have hypnotic states, you have drug-induced states.
Right.
And each of those has its own kind of unique characteristics and ways of impacting the individual.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
Sleep.
Ah, sleep. Yes, so this is obviously a state that we all experience.
Right.
Spend about a third of our lives hopefully asleep.
Hopefully.
And it's a state of, reduced consciousness and sensory activity.
Right.
But it's really important to remember that sleep isn't just one uniform thing.
Right.
We cycle through these different stages of sleep throughout the night.
Yeah, like REM sleep.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So REM sleep is the stage where we tend to have those really vivid dreams,
Uh-huh.
and our brain activity actually increases and becomes very similar to waking consciousness.
Wow.
But then we also have non-REM sleep, which is divided into, light sleep and deep sleep stages.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these stages
Yeah.
has a different, kind of brainwave pattern and a different function in terms of restoring our bodies and our minds.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely feel the difference when you get a good night's sleep
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
as opposed to like tossing and turning all night.
Yeah. It impacts every aspect of our functioning.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last one.
All right.
Unconsciousness.
Yes. So unconsciousness. This is a state where there's a complete or nearly complete lack of awareness
Okay.
and responsiveness
Yeah.
to external stimuli.
Yeah.
So you're not aware of yourself.
Right.
You're not aware of your environment.
And what can bring that on?
So this can be caused by various things like
Yeah.
severe injury or illness,
Mm-hmm.
anesthesia,
Right.
things like that. And it's important to note there are different levels of unconsciousness.
Okay.
It's not just like an on or off switch.
Right. So, for example, like a coma is a form of unconsciousness.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So a coma is a prolonged state of unconsciousness
Mm.
where the individual is completely unresponsive and unawakeable.
Right.
But then you have other states, like a vegetative state,
Yeah.
where there might be sleep-wake cycles. So the person might open their eyes or even move, but there's no real evidence of awareness.
So they're not actually conscious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you also have what's called a minimally conscious state, where there are these very small, fleeting signs of awareness.
Okay.
So it's really a spectrum.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, it really is.
But also super interesting, for all sorts of reasons.
Absolutely. And it's something that, has implications for medicine, for psychology, for neuroscience, for ethics.
Right.
All these different fields are kind of grappling with what it means to be conscious and unconscious and how to define these states.
Totally. So we've gone through the four states. We have waking consciousness, altered states, sleep, and unconsciousness.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting to think about how this applies to just everyday life.
Totally.
We go through these different states all the time sometimes without even realizing it.
Yeah, and even within those states, there are these subtle shifts, right?
Yeah.
So even within waking consciousness, you might have moments where you're super focused and attentive and other moments where you're kind of daydreaming and your mind is wandering.
Right.
And those are all kind of mini altered states in a way.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
And it makes me think about how much control we actually have over our state of consciousness.
that's a big question.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the state, right?
Right.
So some states are more easily manipulated than others.
Yeah.
We can pretty reliably induce sleep or wakefulness.
Right.
But other states, like, the deep meditative states or certain altered states of consciousness, might take more practice and more skill to access.
Right. So maybe something for our listeners to consider is just how they experience these different states in their own lives.
Absolutely. I mean, I think becoming aware of the subtle shifts in our own consciousness throughout the day is a really valuable practice.
Yeah, and it might even give you some insight into, how to manage your energy better, how to be more productive, or just how to better understand yourself and how your mind works.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been a really great deep dive.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope our listeners enjoyed it, and until next time.
See you later.